Hi everyone, Sue Matsuki here for Nightlife Exchange. Today I have another Sue's Muse with a dear friend and a jazz goddess as far as I'm concerned. Please welcome my guest today, Vicki Burns. Thank you so much for being with us today, honey. I know you're going through a lot right now.
Thank you so much, Sue, for having me. Kind of a little bit last minute,
Yeah.
so this means a lot to me that you're able to do this. Thank you.
Well, Vicki's got a show coming up in October. What's the date again, my love?
It's October 12th. It's Saturday. I realize that it is just as Yom Kippur is ending. So if you have, if my Jewish friends, have kind of wrapped up Yom Kippur, I think it's going to be after sundown. It'll be 7 o'clock. So I would be honored to see you.
And you're at the Green Room this time, right?
Green Room 42, which is a gorgeous new venue. I cannot wait to sing there. I've been to several shows and I love the setup. I love the sound, and it's a really beautiful stage. And my band is the smokinest jazz trio in town, I
Who's on
swear.
who's in the band? Give us a couple names.
Well, Art Hirahara, who has been kind of my favorite
Yeah.
pianist for a very long time, he recorded my album Lotus Blossom Days with me.
You did a
Really,
gig with us for us at Urban Stages with him. He was
I
amazing.
did.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
did. And I'm so thrilled to be able to perform with him under any circumstances. So he's going to be my pianist. I was originally going to have Sam Bevan on bass, who is kind of another one of my cohorts. He and Art are kind of like my core band, as I like to call them. But Sam is going to be out of town. He's going to be doing some touring. So I have the fantastic young virtuoso Steve Wood on bass.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
I'm really happy to have a terrific drummer, one of my favorite drummers to work with as a singer, and the one that most evokes, the kind of sparkling, technique that Anita O'Day's drummers always had. His name is Phil Stewart, and he did this show with me actually at the Metropolitan Room because I've done this show twice before. I did it at the Iridium, thanks to the wonderful Scott Barbarino, and I did it at the Metropolitan Room, and now I'm really pleased to bring. It's kind of a new show, except for a few tunes, to Green Room 42.
Tell me why Anita O'Day? What was it about her back in the day when you were growing up? I presume, like me, listening to all the great ladies of jazz. What was it about Anita's voice that spoke to you as a vocalist?
I loved so much about Anita. She had an incredible technique. She had incredible style. She was one of my dad's very, very favorite singers, and so I really heard her a lot, kind of growing up, and I was just completely impressed by her rhythmic acuity. So it's really kind of her rhythmic impulse when she sings that is really amazing to me. And I love all the greats. I love Ella and Sarah and the great Nancy Wilson, and just on and on and on. Carmen McRae is another one of my very favorites, and I love all of these great ladies of jazz. But Anita's kind of like, and also the way that she told a story.
Yeah.
She could be very frank in the way that she expressed herself lyrically, and I really felt drawn in by her stories. Some of the stories were really funny, so she had a great sense of humor, kind of a wry sense of humor, and there's lots of double entendre.
Mhm.
And I love her style and the way that she really tells a story. That to me as a singer, even though I love improvisation, storytelling, as far as I'm concerned, that is a singer's first job.
Mhm.
We need to connect to the lyrics in a way that draws the audience in and sees, their own life reflected, by the stories that we tell. That's the magic.
And
That's
I think the miscommunication or the idea that jazz singers are just about instrumentation, improvisation, and that they don't connect. Even musicians, even jazz musicians, good ones know every lyric that they're playing, and it's important. And I love that you and Gabrielle Stravelli and Laurie Krauss really bring the concept, what we as cabaret people claim is our concept of lyric connection, but it's not true. Anita O'Day, Barbara Lee, so many of the singers back in the day, even Rosemary Clooney, who was considered jazzy pop back in the day, it was
yeah.
about lyric connection. So how did jazz specifically, did you study jazz in a university? What's your background in terms of that?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. And once again, I'm going to bring up my dad because I had come in second in the state of Maine, where I am now, in a classical vocal competition when I was in high school.
Classical.
And Yeah, it was really, it was, I was 15 and I won 50 whole bucks, which I spent on a pair of fry boots, which were all the rage. And my father said, "Well, you think you're all that." You know, he was teasing me. He said, "I'm not going to be impressed with you until you can do something like this." And he sat me down and he made me listen to Ella's fantastic album, Ella Swings Lightly, which is one of my very favorite albums of all time, still to this day. And in fact, I'm telling my students that they need to do vocal transcriptions from this album because they're so good. And he played me Ella scatting, and I was just gobsmacked because I really hadn't heard that much of her scatting. And we'd heard a little bit of jazz growing up, but my parents had kind of shifted over to some pop too. So having to listen for a whole afternoon, I thought to myself, I will not rest until I learn how to do this, you know? And back in those days, there were no jazz vocal programs in the
Right.
universities. And so I knew I had to, I knew I had to be a classical vocal major, which I had no problem with. And I went to the University of New Hampshire, and I wanted to be in their big band, which didn't really happen, but I ended up being a full-time, well, not full-time, but a professional vocalist for a really fantastic big band called the Clayton Pool Orchestra. They were New England based. They still exist actually, and it was a terrific education. And so my jazz education really started with them. I did not study jazz in school, but I did my own transcriptions of Ella's solos and Sarah Vaughan's solos, and I worked hard to understand the repertoire on my own. And so my jazz education comes basically from the road.
It's funny you mentioned Sarah because Ella is the instrumentation improvisation queen, but Sarah also was an amazing improvisational singer and
Oh,
a
she was.
range. That woman was classically trained. She had a
Yep.
classical background. I kind of think that classical music is kind of like ballet to jazz. You got to learn the basics of what is before you can take off. How do you feel about that? And do you incorporate some of that concept in how you teach your students?
Absolutely, 100%. They all learn classical technique, but it's not classical the way that you would hear a classical singer do the technique. I've basically got some core exercises that I teach the kids, which talk about resonance and developing resonance, which some teachers of jazz don't think is important for a jazz singer, but I think they're very important. So developing the resonance of the head resonance and the chest resonance, understanding what the mix range is about, how to create that in a healthy way. Those are the things that I work on first, because for me the foundation of a great jazz style is a beautiful tone and also basically your sound. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what jazz musicians do. The instrumentalists do that, so you really get a sense of who they are from the
Right.
sound of their horn or the sound of their piano or the sound of
For me,
whatever.
with the bass player, it's how he arcos. Like when someone gives me the hair on my arm stands up when they arco, it's like, oh, I got to work with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I love the hair standing up because that's my sign too. Oh, okay.
Barometer. Yeah.
Good. Yep, this is my barometer. Absolutely. So
Now, can
yes,
I
I
ask you something a little personal? I know that you've been going through the loss of your mom recently, and you are actually in the throes of planning her service and everything. As a singer, how do you find your gumption to get on stage and sing when you're going through this process? Is it a release to get on stage? Is it um what is it for you? Because I know what it is for me. I had to sing at my beloved nephew's funeral and I had to pull it all together to be able to do that. How about for you? How do you get through something like this?
well, I sang for my dad's funeral, and I'm planning on singing for my mom's funeral, and I'm gonna actually sing Misty, which is
Mhm.
their favorite song. I'm planning this show, and it's really, really helping me. It's helping me to focus. It's helping me to move through the grieving process. My mom was a wonderful champion of my singing, and even though she wasn't doing that great physically, she wasn't doing that great in terms of her own health. She made it to Birdland in February of 2023 for my CD release party. So she was there along with my brother, and they came from Maine. They drove down from Maine, and she really rallied for that.
Mhm.
She also rallied last year. I had a big concert here in Maine at a place called the Camden Opera House, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous venue up here. And she rallied and she came out for that too. So she was there always, when she could be. And I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be dedicating this concert to her, of course.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, she had so much, she meant so much to me in terms of just being, my champion. She really was, ever since I was a kid. So she always believed in me.
That's a beautiful thing. It really is. Um, so in terms of mentors, who have been some of your mentors, and what what was some of the best advice that you received as from someone that was in your life? It can be personal or professional. I'm just curious.
Well, I had a lot of mentors, I will say, and especially jazz instrumentalists. I will also say that. But one of the mentors that I had, one of my very favorite singers, I had a chance to chat on the phone when I was a young singer with him. So Mel Torme came into town. Um,
Goodness.
yeah, came into town in New Hampshire, and he was going to do a stint with my band, with the Clayton Pool Orchestra. And unfortunately, I was not on that show. You have no idea how upset I was. But
Good
I got a
man.
chance to talk with him. He was on the radio, and people said, "Well, if you have any questions for Mel," and I said, "I got a question for Mel." So I called him up, and I said, "What advice would you give to a young professional singer?" And he said, "Here's my best advice." He said, if you're on the road and you've got a lot of shows coming up, one right after another, one town after another, and you end up singing a little bit hard, you sing a little bit so that you're feeling a little bit of vocal fatigue, is what we would call it now. He said, make sure, after you might be out partying after after your show. You might not get in until 4 a.m. He said, but make sure that you sleep as much as you possibly can before your next show. So if you get in at 4 a.m., he said, you better sleep till 4 p.m. He said, we're talking 12 hours of sleep. He said, if you do that, you'll be taking excellent care of your voice. Having enough sleep as a vocalist is something that is not even thought of very much. But I always tell my students this, you need to have diva rest. If you're not singing on stage, what you need to do is diva rest, which means you don't talk that much after 8 p.m. at night, and you try to give your voice about 12 hours rest.
Wow, that's amazing advice. Julie Wilson, who was one of my mentors, I'm up in Alaska with her, and I'm singing a song that not many people know called uh, oh God, I'm gonna miss you. Mel Torme wrote it. He wrote it, he sang it, wasn't a hit. He gave it to like three other guy singers. It just wasn't a hit. And I think it was a song that was too vulnerable as a guy singing it. But
Mm.
and that's why it didn't hit for a guy. And so I sang it, and it was right after Mel had his stroke, and Julie Wilson was the teacher in the class, and she said, I knew Mel Torme. Of course she knew Mel Torme. Of course she knew everybody. And she said, he would have loved that you were honoring him by singing his music. And people don't realize that Mel Torme was also a great songwriter and
Yeah.
an improvisational singer as well. How
Yeah.
lucky for you to have met him,
Well,
really.
I was only on the phone, but it
I
was
know,
still
but still,
a great conversation. It was a
you
great
got sage
conversation.
advice from Mel Torme. I'm jealous. So everyone,
And
I'm going to
I'm
have
elegant.
I'm going to have at the bottom of this interview, I'm going to have all the information, a direct ticket link to Vicky's show. And maybe if she can send me a little clip of her singing, you can hear what this wonderful woman sounds like. And you will then go get a ticket to her show. I guarantee it. Vicki, thank you so much for being here with us, considering I know what everything that you're going through. I appreciate that you showed up for the interview, and I'm really happy to have this chance to speak with you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Nightlife Exchange. I'm Sue Matsuki, and we are Nightlife Exchange. Have a great day, everyone. Thank
Do
you.
thank you.